And joining me now is Jared Rich, an attorney from Brooklyn and running on the ballot line of Jared Rich for NYC. Welcome, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
So you're an attorney. Tell us a little bit about what you've accomplished in your career and how that prepares you for the role of New York City Public Advocate.
For the last 10 years, I've been an attorney. I've been an attorney for 15 years. I'm working for myself for the last 10 years. I'm an independent attorney, beholden to no one. I work on Court Street in Brooklyn. I have my own office. It's basically me, my cell phone, my printer, a pen, against whoever. I represent all communities in New York. I'm in and out of a lot of courts, a lot of housing court, a lot of real estate-based issues. I represent the community.
And so how does that work prepare you to hold elected office, especially the office of public advocate?
I'm the people's lawyer. I'm the guy that the people go to when they have a problem, when their friends have a problem, when their families have a problem. Whether or not I'm going to be the one to handle it, I'm going to be the one to put them on the right course. And they know that and they trust me. And this is how I've run my business and my life for my whole life. The public advocate, stated another way, is the people's lawyer. I was born for this job. As public advocate, I'm going to operate just like I operate my own private business, my own private law practice. I'm going to represent the people to the fullest.
So say a little bit more about your vision, your understanding of the office. When you think of New York City Public Advocate, what do you think of, or what should it be in your mind?
What we think of, and the problem is, and now speaking to the community and speaking to voters, no one even knows what the public advocate is. People in the know what it is. People know the names who have been the public advocate, but really what the public advocate has turned into, unfortunately, is a stepping stone for higher office. I'm not here for higher office. I'm here to be the public advocate. I'm going to recreate this office. In the city charter, it says, in addition to other duties and responsibilities, the public advocate shall serve as the public advocate. And I'm going to run with that clause to mean that I will be representing the people, not only introducing legislation, not only commencing litigation, not only holding public hearings. And when I say public hearings, I mean in the courtyard at NYCHA, we'll have a hearing.
So holding hearings, introducing legislation, you mentioned NYCHA. Are there some other issues that you'd want to take on? Are there things you have in mind, say, if I get in there and I make this, the people's law firm in the image of Jared Rich, here are some of the things I want to tackle?
People talk about the limited budget. I believe it's about $3 million budget. One of the things that I really have to offer here is I'm a respected attorney. I've earned my respect practicing law by myself, and my adversaries respect me, and now they're my friends. And what I have is an army of lawyers that's literally, they're salivating at the opportunity to be able to come in of counsel to the public advocate and live their lifelong dream of exposing everything that's going on. And that's something I really have to offer. And I believe with the limited budget, I'm going to be able to put something together that's going to blow people's minds.
So what are some of those things? I mean, you talk about NYCHA. Are there other sort of topical areas, agencies, departments that you think really could use a closer look from an army of attorneys that you'd bring in?
Well, I think the whole community knows that we have an opioid epidemic that is simply insane. And it's not heroin coming in from South America or from Afghanistan. It's pills being manufactured in plants. They're making this many pills. They know it's for this many people, but they continue to make this many pills. And as public advocate, I'm going to focus on the manufacturers, the whole legal drug distribution chain that's going from the manufacturers down to the community via pharmacies and bad doctors, because this is a controllable situation, and we have elected officials that are looking up in the air like they have no power over it, but this is legal drugs coming into the community and destroying us, and we're going to go after that.
Are there areas from your law practice you've seen some of how city government works? You mentioned some real estate law. Are there things related to that you think need a
I know housing court. I believe I know housing law and real estate law better than any of my opponents. I'm very confident in believing that, and I understand the practice of law, that you might have a law on paper, but in practice it doesn't matter. For example, we all jaywalk. It's illegal. What does it matter that it's illegal? In practice, it doesn't mean anything.
And are there things in real estate or housing where that's an issue? Are there things not being enforced that you think need to be enforced? Or are there too many laws in the books in certain ways? I mean, what's sort of your perspective?
In some ways, there's too many laws. For example, the mayor has a good the mayor put a lot of money into having tenants in housing court have lawyers. A lot of money is funding legal aid, which is great, but in practice what's happening is it's a logjam and nothing's happening in housing court because there's too much now activity and not enough judges. And I want to expose that and make sure that the housing court particularly has more resources, has more judges, has more courtrooms. You go to Brooklyn Housing Court, people don't even know. The whole building, it's rented. We don't even own it. It's a rented building that the lease expired 2 years ago, and the housing court is literally a holdover tenant.
So you mentioned Mayor de Blasio. If you win the special election, at least through this year, you would be responsible for oversight of the mayoral administration. Say a little bit more about your view of him as mayor. He's now in his 6th year. Do you think there's things that he's doing or not doing that you particularly want to hold his feet to the fire? Are there things that you've seen as failures where the prior public advocate really didn't call him out on?
There's things that the mayor does that I don't believe in. I believe very strongly that universal pre-K is a tremendous program that he got through, and I'm going to be able to take advantage of that for myself and my family very soon. You know, right now we have a mayor who seems to be a little aloof and is going across the country, possibly propelling his own interest to be a presidential candidate. I'd like to focus the mayor, but more than anything, my philosophy with dealing with anybody is I don't want to build walls. I want to build bridges. I want to work with people and get things done. So I don't want to point fingers all day long. I want to point out the common ground that we have and push forward to get things done.
So you mentioned that you run your own law practice and it's just you.
Yep.
Even some folks say the public advocate is not that strong, not that powerful, but it is a $3 million budget, roughly a couple dozen employees that you can have for that type of budget, depending on what you pay people, obviously. Is that something you're prepared to do? Are you ready for that jump in management and responsibility? Do you feel like you'd be ready to take over a budget of that size?
Absolutely. And I'm going to use that budget very wisely. And I like to point out that I got on a ballot spending about $2,500 where my opponent spent literally $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 to get on a ballot. I spend efficiently and I get things done. For $2,500 I got on the ballot, imagine what I could do for $3 million.
And you mentioned hiring a group of lawyers. Anything else you'd have in mind in terms of ways that you would manage the office? Are there certain areas of expertise that you need to bring in? Are there certain positions that you'd want to fill?
Well, one thing that the city charter also says is the public advocate can appoint 2 other public advocates, basically deputy public advocates, to act in the public advocate's place. And I intend to immediately appoint 1 deputy who leans politically to the left of me, 1 deputy who leans politically to the right of me, because I believe in listening to everybody on all sides and coming to a decision based on all information. And every single day, my office will be in 3 boroughs, every single day.
You say 1 deputy to your left, 1 deputy to your right. Well, where are you? How do you describe your politics then? If you're saying you'd be sort of in the middle of these 2 deputies, that could be anywhere. Where are you?
I'm a registered Democrat. I like to think of myself as a centrist, and more than that, I like to think of myself as a fair-minded human being. I believe that fairness is a 2-way street, and I believe we have to listen to everybody. I don't believe anybody has all the answers. I don't believe one side has all the answers. And politically right now, the sides are so in opposition that I really want to help rein it in, that there is this common ground.
Let's talk about a couple more issues that are facing the city. Let's come back to NYCHA actually for a second. Obviously, it's been a very important and troubling issue that's been facing the city. Do you have a perspective on what needs to be done at NYCHA? Do you think that where the mayor is now, he's recently announced a NYCHA 2.0 program, which the crux of that has a lot of private development coming in on underused NYCHA land. What do you think about that? Is it something as public advocate you'd try to push the city in a different direction?
I think that NYCHA is one of the things that the whole community, all of New York, needs to point at their elected officials and say what was going on. My father grew up in the Marble Hill projects in the Bronx. The projects were great. It was veterans projects, it was a good lifestyle, and he has only good memories of that. And you fast forward now 60, 70 years, and it's a disaster, and it didn't just fall apart overnight. All the boilers didn't.
Decades,
all the boilers didn't just stop working this winter. So what is going on? Every city, every private building is able to provide heat, and we could deal with these things. And New York City has the capability to enforce landlords providing for their tenants essential services, but yet an entire segment that was under New York City's watch was just forgotten about. Now, there was money in this, so where did the money go? That's the real question.
So you think it needs some more investigation in terms of how it's been managed or mismanaged, as the case may be?
It's going to help weed out the bad folks.
A couple other issues. Transit obviously is an important part of city life. That we've also seen some crises, but that's not as simple as, even though NYCHA is an authority that the mayor has a lot of control over, the MTA is another authority, but the governor has more control over that than the mayor.
Right.
Are there things, though, transit related, not just the subways, that as public advocate you'd look into, you'd push for? Are there policies you think the city and state should pursue?
Yeah, I believe there was actually a monumental failure in government locally a few years back. There's the introduction of bike lanes, which are great, and we need to have bike lanes, but they put in these bike lanes, and they didn't tell anyone what to do. And really, when you have bike lanes, it's a whole new way of thinking. You have to, as a driver, you have to look differently. As a pedestrian, you have to think differently. And they just put them in and let everybody start crashing into each other or almost crashing into each other. And what that did was create hate and create division. Instead of us sharing our streets, which we can do through information, they put us in a position to not like each other.
So what do you do as public advocate? You try to get more information out there? You try to hold more
As public advocate for that
meetings?
issue, it would have to be education, education, education.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's telling it. It used to be look both ways before you cross the street. But it's a little different now. You have to look differently. You have to be considering that there's different vehicles on the road. It's different. It sounds different, and it's a different way of thinking.
Are you of the mind that it's important for the city to get more people out of their cars? Are you, do you believe in congestion pricing and a push to speed up the buses and some of these types of things, or where do you, where would you be sort of focusing any energy that you would have on the transit issue?
I believe in congestion pricing to the extent that it's part of a congestion plan. Right now, the estimates that I've seen, and it's interesting, you read about congestion pricing, nobody actually talks about reducing congestion. They just talk about how much money it's going to raise. When you ask about how much it's going to reduce congestion, the current estimates are somewhere like 10%. A 60-minute drive turns into
something.
A 60-minute drive turning into 54 minutes is not exactly reducing congestion. I'd like to see a congestion plan that involves not only congestion pricing, which should, frankly, exempt outer borough New Yorkers or any New Yorker who could prove that they really need to get to work using their car and make under, let's say, $125,000 a year. If you could prove that, you're exempt. There should be a tax and tourist tax.
The mayor has talked a little bit about some exemptions, not exactly those same ones, but that he'd like to see some of that. Another big topic, education. You've started to see some of this, as you mentioned, with your own young kids. You'll be taking advantage of pre-K, but as public advocate, certainly Letitia James, and before her, Bill de Blasio, had some focus on education. It's obviously an issue that impacts many, many New Yorkers, whether they have children in schools or their teachers or administrators, or just watching the city budget. Any thoughts on things that you would focus in on in education?
I'm a public school guy. Both my parents are retired public school teachers in New York City. My only brother is a New York City public school teacher. I strongly believe the following. Every single public school should be a great school. We have charter schools, we have some specialized schools which are great and are providing a great education for those kids, but what about the rest of the kids? We have Amazon coming to town, and nobody's talking about the fact that we have 25,000 jobs coming to town, but we don't have anyone qualified because our schools are shot. That's an issue.
So what's the solution? What's one or two things that the schools need to do, programs that should be put in place? Is it a matter of more funding? Is it a matter of fighting the teachers union on their contract? What are some of your thoughts?
I'm definitely not fighting the teachers union. I'm supporting the teachers union. Their contract should be higher. We need the best teachers to raise our kids and teach our kids.
So you've been in this race, and we're in our final minute here, Jared Rich. You've been in this race, busy field, lots of forums. You're running around the city trying to talk to voters. There's a lot of current and former elected officials in the race. How do you separate yourself to voters from the folks that have been in government who say they have the experience and this is the next right step for them? What differentiates you from them?
Because I am the voter. I am the real guy that they've been looking for. And they know that the elected officials who are my opponents, they've had their chance. And look what's going on. NYCHA's falling apart on their watch. The subway stopped on their watch. It's time for new blood.
And when you look to secure enough votes for winning this race, when you say to voters there's one thing that they need to know about you, what's that sort of final message?
I'm the people's lawyer. I was born for this.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. Jared, Rich, thank you very much for taking the time.
Ben, thanks for having me.
All right, good luck.